Hey there, friends and neighbors. Perrin Lovett here on Thursday, February 18th, 2021. Welcome back to the Prepper Post News, courtesy of Freedom Prepper. And we've got everybody watching at Freedom Prepper, at the community, YouTube, and everyone listening to the podcast. Hello and welcome all. And I have been remiss all week to mention again that this is winter. And winter has been known to get cold and snowy. And I think 70% of the, at least the continental U.S. is covered with snow, or it was earlier in the week when I forgot about it. The reason I forgot is because in the swamp where I live, the swamp near my cave, it almost never snows. Instead, we get rain and more rain and rain, to the point that I was at Lowe's looking for gopher wood. But now the rain has stopped. It's going to warm up, going to get cold again, because again, it's winter and that happens. It's not climate change so much as it is nature. But we've got some stories about that. The news is just covered up with this. If you check your weather, they're going to tell you about the weather in Idaho or Maine, Alaska, where it's cold. And the Drudge Report keeps running the scare map with the big blob of sub-zero temperatures and wind chills. It's dipped down from Canada. And Texas, normally a warmer place, is being hammered. Got some stories about that, 3 of them actually. And this is, we've run stories, videos, articles before, usually in the run-up to the winter season, usually in the fall, about preparing for winter. It's just common sense. If the electricity goes out, if it's really, really cold, you might need some alternative heat. You might need to sleep in a sleeping bag inside, things like that. We have the electricity cut off to millions of people in and out of Texas. It will be restored again, but think about how long you can endure being without electric or gas powered heat, because the electric furnace or the gas furnace usually has some sort of electric starter. You need some kind of backup. At least twice in my life, I've been in pretty substantial winter storms and lost power for multiple days, and it's an adventure. That was the last one was maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Would I want to do it now? I've discovered the older I get, the more frozen cold averse I get. But just something to think about. Interestingly enough, we also had a lot of communications outages in Texas, and to include cell phone service. Again, that stuff is, the towers and the transmitters are powered by electricity. If the grid goes down, they go down. Be prepared to communicate. Better yet, just make some hot chocolate, sit by the fire, and ride it out. How cold is it? According to Bloomberg, they had to shut down the biggest oil refinery in the country. Now, I don't know how that works. I've never really paid attention to the oil refining industry. I understand they have operations in the Arctic, so why, maybe, I don't know. But one result of that is the price of gas goes up. When there's a glut in supply, if the Saudis open up the spigot and, we have just trillions of barrels in excess, the price will very slowly creep down penny by week. But you let an oil refinery shut down in the Gulf of Mexico, overnight, the price jumps 30 cents. That's just the way it works. You can prepare for that too. Either limit your travels or stockpile a little fuel. How cold is it? Well, apparently in Dallas-Fort Worth, CBS says that it's so cold that they're having trouble delivering some kind of new gene modification poison. I don't know anything about that, but that sounds like old man winter has done us a favor. So thank you, snow and ice. Keep the bad people and their poison away from us. All right, moving on. I've got some things I really want to talk about. There's a lot of stuff here that's really interesting. Got some revolutions all over the place, and not necessarily the marching in the street kind. We've got things going from bad to worse, bad to good. and so forth. Up in D.C., this is a very funny little take on things that I should have seen coming. Things are going from bad to worse. Right now, you know that transnational drug dealers have immunity. You know, if their product kills you, and it has all over the place, you got no recourse. They cannot be sued. They can't be held liable, regardless of anything, including what they knew before they got started. Keep that in mind. But at the same time, old Creepy Joe wants to hold gun makers liable for crimes committed by third parties with the weapons that those gun makers make. Isn't that nice? You have a thing that is constitutionally protected that gets no protection at all. You have something else that is completely outside the scope of the federal government's authority. They get total immunity. It's almost like a cozy plot. Make of that what you will. But take heart. We don't get a lot of news out of Europe for a reason, because a lot of the news is good. We just had a major development in the Netherlands. The Hague court has ruled that the curfew, got to be careful with how I style this, the curfew for something has no legal basis and is a far-reaching violation of the right to freedom of movement and privacy, and limits, among other things, the right to freedom of assembly and demonstration. You know, doing those things that you're not allowed to do in Washington, D.C. anymore. And so this has far-reaching implications. It's part of a movement that's growing all over Europe. People who've been convicted for violating a curfew and had to pay a fine or gone to jail, they're having their records expunged and they're going to get their money back. And people are now free to move around freely the way free people do. There's a lot of stuff happening. You know, people in America tend to talk about, well, Europe is gone because all the immigrants are coming in from the Middle East, and if you look at the total statistics, they are in a vastly better position than we are today. They're essentially back where we were in 1970. The difference is they're awake and they're getting just angry as hell, and things are really about to change in the countries where they need to change. Half the continent never caved in to the siren song of globalism. So hope. Maybe someday the old world in its might will ride to the rescue of the children in the new world. Or we may have to do it ourselves. All right. This is a story that could occupy the entire video. I'm not going to let it because I've got another one behind it that's really important. We have bad to worse, good to bad, and now we've got bad to absolutely satanic here in the United Soviet States of America, formerly the USA. This is a story about the new debtors' prisons in this country, and it's a long, interesting story. They have a great quote about de Tocqueville. He was a let's see here. He was to later note that this willingness, he drew a distinction between America that, you know, forgave debts and refused to put people in prison for debts, as contrast to Europe, where every country except Portugal did that. He was to later note that this willingness to not see bankruptcies as forever disgracing made Americans different, not only from the nations of Europe, but from all the commercial nations of our time, or from his time. This movement reflected a powerful American ideal. It was wrong to permanently shackle a person's productive potential. And that was back in the 1820s when America operated with real money. Mind you again that in the United States today, there is no real money whatsoever in common circulation. There's stuff that has value, gold and silver, and by and large, it is held by a small cabal of Luciferian elites. So when, I have these arguments sometimes with people about, total debt absolution. And what this story is really about is, it's about people who get convicted of, in some cases, very minor crimes, and they go into this quasi-private prison system, and they get shackled with all these fees, probation fees, court fees, paying for the sheriff's retirement fund fees, and it just adds up, and they can never get out from under it. In many cases, after they serve their time in jail and they should be free now in society, the debt haunts them. They can't get rid of it, and in some cases, they can go back to jail. The Southern Center for Human Rights was working on this and wrote a book about it about 15 years ago. This story puts a lot of emphasis on this impacting black and brown people in the United States, and it does. Although, just like the Patriot Act was going to protect us from the terrorist, well, today we're all the terrorist. So we also in danger in this economy of if black and brown people have the problems, we're all black and brown. But what the Southern Center's book was called was Race, Geography, and Poverty. And those are the three main factors that can affect anybody. If you're poor, rural, and if you're a person of color especially, you're out of luck. You have no rights. And that was 15 years ago. They made a solid case and nothing was done about it. Just like nothing is done about any of the debts or the whole monetary system. There's an easy workaround for that. I have these arguments and people say, well, if them students ain't got to pay their loan back, why should the government pay their loan? Okay, that's stupid to begin with. But I asked the question back, who stole the gold? And what? The students and the misdemeanor shoplifters of America did not issue an order that confiscated all gold into the hands of a private bank owned by foreigners. FDR did, and that was he issued an executive order seizing all private gold and giving it to the Federal Reserve. Period. That's how they started absorbing all the wealth, and that was codified into law. And now the past 80 years has just been them sucking up the remaining value. There's an easy way around that. If we had a president, if Trump had really wanted to be popular, or if Joe Biden, had some synapses that fired correctly, what he could do is just issue an executive order that all commercial banks, or all central banks in the United States, there's only one, has to surrender to the people all of its gold, or to the people's treasury all of its gold. A great first step to getting back to real money, a great first step to getting rid of this satanic bank and ending all of these problems. Making de Tocqueville proud. It hasn't happened in 15 years. Probably not going to, well, you know what? In another 15 years, it may start happening the hard way. There are always easy ways around this. I've written about this, talked about this. Very few people care because, unless the wolf is at your door, we tend not to think about these things. But like I said, congratulations, you're ISIS. So the wolf is out there. If you listen, you can hear him howling. Here's a story related. Doing okay on time. Christians, get ready. Persecution can happen anywhere. And when it happens quickly. Since we are but sojourners here, we ought to be prepared for such times, even if they never happen in our lifetimes. They certainly may come to our children and grandchildren, and so how we worship matters, how we teach worship matters. I've got a story, it was just a quick op-ed written at the blog at Lou Rockwell's site about the Soviet experience of Christian persecution, how notions of something like that happening in America are still mocked by the other side, even as they're starting to happen. So, again, it may not happen to you, but it could happen to your kids someday or somebody that you know. So it pays for all of us to get ready and to make sure that the following generations are ready as well. And that's where we're going to end up here with just some shocking news. I've got to shift over here. Two little shocking stories that aren't really that shocking, and then one that just blew me away about something that I know a lot about that always blows me away, but this one took the cake, even now. The first one is silly. It's just silly. It's a Politico cartoon thing. It's more cartoon than article. They want to get rid of Uncle Sam, the guy with the top hat. I want you. Well, they want you out, Uncle Sam. Why? Well, you're old, you're white, and you're a male. So, away with you. What's going to replace him? Take a look at the little slideshow. Traditionally he's been dressed in red, white, and blue. Some people want to turn that into a rainbow. Some people, just take a look at it and know that nothing is safe. That one almost makes sense because what's the purpose of having him? They've already destroyed the country. I mean, I could add him to the wall rug and let them have their nonsense. But it's not just the government. They want all of Western culture ended. There's a story out of the Washington Times. Let me go to it. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Billy Shakespeare has got to go. And this is a story from all over the country about schools, public and private, where social justice warriors have entrenched themselves. And just like Plato and Aristotle, anything Western is a representation of slavery, white supremacy, blah, 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 blah. Got to get rid of it. And apparently nothing is worse in the English department than Shakespeare. Why? Because he was prolific, it's timeless, there's so many lessons, it's interesting, it's written in a different way than modern English, it forces you to concentrate, there's a beauty to it, all things that they hate. Intelligence, complexity, beauty, they hate them, they want them gone. We have an Elizabeth Nelson, I also saw it as Nielsen, who teaches English at the Twin Cities Academy, which I think is a charter school, in St. Paul, Minnesota. She told School Library Journal that she gives her students Marxist theory when reading Shakespeare's tragedies. At least in the public schools, there's not a lot of emphasis on Shakespeare or any kind of reading anymore. Romeo and Juliet is the big one that they do. They usually have a condensed version. There's the Common Core is pitiful. They usually go with a more condensed version. Now sometimes they're presenting it in a really updated 2-page. I saw one that was a hip hop version, which makes sense if that's the demographic you're targeting. Sometimes that'll hold interest. But if you just let the kids run with this stuff and read it, a lot of them find a lot of interest in it, the same way that kids have for the past 500 years. But the Marxist theory, first of all, Marxist theory was written by a high drunk, about things he didn't understand because he was the elitist he wanted to overthrow. It doesn't make any sense, and it was never applied anywhere. Stalinist or Maoist communism, Leninist communism, is not the same as Marxist theory. So it's all pointless, and it's a detrimental pointless. If you're reading Macbeth and the young child says, well, how would Birnam Wood come to Dunstandane? How does that make sense? Oh, there's a lesson there. It's a build-up. You're getting there. Learning gobbledygook, toxic masculinity, the same never-ending nonsense. Not to be outdone by the public schools in Horry County, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach area. We have this one. This is the one that shocked even me. A government school in 2021. It's going to be bad. And this is a story about which school is this? Something Forest Brook Elementary School. You need to look at the article. Is linked up at freedomprepper.com. It's a Post and Courier article with a video. You need to watch the video. You need to see what they have put in a 5th grade child's classroom. Every desk is now surrounded by a plexiglass cell. They call it a COVID shield. It's a cell. It literally looks like the holding and communications area of a large jail or prison. And if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these things in a row, 8 layers of plexiglass, it starts a distortion and a shadowing. The kid in the back literally cannot see the front of the classroom, where the teacher and the board would be located. We had a teacher, one of the good teachers, who was highly upset about this. So she took a video walking around her classroom. Watch the video, please. And said, how many of the school board members would want to conduct their day locked up in one of these. It's a cell. It's a solitary confinement cell with clear walls. And her reward for that was to be threatened by the school board. Take that down. You don't need to make this look negative. Well, how the hell do you make something look negative when it's purely, it's child abuse. It's absolute child abuse. And again, I looked at the stats behind this school. Like most public schools, it's starting to slide, but it's still one of the good ones. For just about every category, their test performances are above the county and above the state of South Carolina, which means nothing, but at least they're in the top 15% or so, sliding. But that's what happens to the good schools. Can you imagine what happens in the bad ones? Don't imagine. Just don't have anything to do with them. This is utter insanity. This woman has done us a tremendous service by providing this example. It's only child abuse. That's the only description of it. Don't have your kids in that anywhere. Yeah, homeschool them. A lot of the private schools are going this way. They're that private or charter school up in St. Paul, run by Marxists. I looked at the woman. She lives with her cat. So she has a husband. She has a husband. I don't know how the husband identifies, but they live with their cats. And if I remember correctly, the cats are named after comic book characters. So you have your insane Marxist comic book character teacher overriding William Shakespeare. That's the state of the schools today, now conducted in cells, which various courts around the country have ruled you can't put children in boxes. Well, that's what they're doing to all of them, and it's evil, and we should have nothing to do with that. So that's where I'm going to leave you today. Tomorrow, I've got all the things that I've been putting off, and I've got a couple things I've been thinking about. Might tell a story. I don't know. It's Friday. Fun day. I'll see you then. I hope you guys get your power back, and everybody stay warm. God bless.